Karen stood there smiling as the tow truck hauled away my police cruiser, completely unaware that 10 minutes later, my chief would be arresting her. I remember standing on the sidewalk, watching the rear end of Unit 47 disappear around the corner, and thinking, she has absolutely no idea what she just did. The tow truck driver wouldn't even look at me. Smart man. The woman standing next to me, arms folded across her chest, designer sunglasses perched on her nose like a crown, she was beaming. Literally smiling like she just won something. She had no idea she just lost everything. Let me back up. My name is Officer Daniel Reeves. 12 years on the force. Commendations for community outreach, crisis intervention, 2 Department Medals of Valor. I'm the guy who talks jumpers off ledges and gets kids to put down weapons by remembering their grandmother's name. I don't yell. I don't escalate. I wait. That Saturday morning, I was off duty. Completely off duty. I'd worked a brutal back-to-back overnight shift covering for 2 officers who called in sick, and my sergeant told me to take the weekend. Sleep. Decompress. Be a human being for 48 hours. The problem was I'd driven Unit 47, my assigned patrol vehicle, home the previous night because my personal car was in the shop getting a brake job. Completely standard procedure. Officers are permitted to take their assigned vehicles home under certain conditions, and I had all the proper authorization. A laminated department placard sat right on the dashboard. Bold black letters. Hard to miss. I parked in the open lot adjacent to Maplewood Commons, a quiet residential mixed-use area about 6 blocks from my apartment. It was a public lot. Free parking. No restrictions on weekends. I'd parked there a dozen times before, both in my personal car and in the cruiser. I went home. Set an alarm for noon. Slept like the dead. By 10:47 a.m., someone had other plans. I was still in my pajamas when my neighbor Marcus knocked on my door holding a coffee and wearing an expression I can only describe as "this is going to be a story." "Yo, Danny," he said slowly, "someone is out there arguing with a tow truck driver about your cop car." I blinked at him. "Say that again." He said it again. I threw on jeans, a t-shirt, and sneakers and walked the 6 blocks. That's when I saw her for the first time. She was maybe 55, 60. Khaki pants pressed to a razor edge. A pale yellow blouse. Hair done like she had a 9 a.m. appointment for it every single morning. She was standing with her feet shoulder-width apart in the lot, holding a clipboard, an actual clipboard, gesturing at the tow truck operator with the authority of someone who believed with her whole chest that she ran this particular piece of the earth. The tow truck operator, a big quiet guy named Lou, I'd find out his name later, was hooking up Unit 47 with the slow, methodical energy of a man who just wanted to get through his morning. "Excuse me," I said, walking up. "Calm. Easy. No ID out. Just a regular person in a t-shirt approaching a situation." The woman turned and looked at me the way people look at a smudge on a window. "Are you associated with this vehicle?" she asked. "I am," I said. "Can I ask what's going on?" She straightened her spine about 2 extra inches. "What's going on," she said, drawing out each word like she was speaking to someone not quite bright enough to keep up, "is that this vehicle has been parked in this lot without authorization, and I am having it removed." I looked at the cruiser. Looked back at her. "It's a police vehicle, ma'am." "I can see that," she said, like the observation embarrassed me somehow. "That doesn't give it special privileges on private property." "This is a public lot," I said. And here's where I saw it, that flicker. That little micro-expression that crosses a certain type of person's face when you've said something factually true that they've decided in advance to ignore. She didn't even blink. "I represent the Maplewood Commons Residents Association," she said, tapping the clipboard. "And we have an agreement with the property management company that governs parking in this lot. Unauthorized overnight parking is a violation." "I parked at 11 p.m. last night," I said. The overnight restriction on this lot ends at 8 a.m. It's 10:50. She paused one beat too long. It's still in violation, she said. I looked at her. I looked at the placard on the dashboard, bright and laminated and right there through the windshield. Ma'am, there's a department authorization placard on the dash. That vehicle is. I don't recognize the authority of that placard in this jurisdiction, she said. I want you to hear that sentence again. She did not recognize the authority of a police department placard. I took a breath. Long and slow. 12 years of crisis intervention breathing. What's your name? I asked. Patricia Calloway, she said, like the name itself was supposed to do something to me. And before you say another word, I've already called this in. Lou is doing his job. She looked past me to the tow driver. Lou, please continue. Lou, to his credit, glanced at me with an expression that said I'm just a guy with a truck, man. He continued the hookup. Ma'am, I said, one more time. I really want to encourage you to slow down and think about this carefully. She smiled. Actually smiled. I've been thinking about it very carefully, she said. This lot has been abused by outsiders for years. I have been fighting for proper enforcement. And today, that enforcement is happening. She uncapped a pen and made a small, satisfied checkmark on whatever was on that clipboard. I put my hands in my pockets. Okay, I said. She looked at me like she expected more. An argument. Pleading, maybe. The gratifying spectacle of someone powerless recognizing her power. I just nodded once and stepped back. She actually looked disappointed. Unit 47 left the lot at 11:04 a.m. Patricia watched it go with her hands clasped in front of her like she was watching a graduation. I pulled out my phone and dialed. The line picked up on the second ring. Chief Harding, said the voice on the other end. Deep. Tired in the way of someone who'd been in this job long enough to have heard everything. Chief, it's Reeves. I'm sorry to call on a Saturday. Reeves. A pause. Why does your voice sound like that? Like what, sir? Like you're trying not to laugh. I turned slightly away from Patricia, who had begun walking toward a small cluster of residents gathering at the lot's edge, clipboard in hand, ready to hold court. Sir, I said, Unit 47 has just been towed from the Maplewood Commons public lot on Birchwood Avenue. Civilian ordered tow. The individual who ordered it is still on scene. Silence. Then, I'm sorry. Did you say Unit 47 was towed? Yes, sir. Another silence. This one felt different. Heavier. Reeves. Was the department placard displayed? Clearly, sir. On the dash. And the civilian saw it? I pointed it out directly, sir. She stated, and I quote, that she did not recognize the authority of the placard in this jurisdiction. The silence that followed lasted about 4 full seconds. Don't move, Chief Harding said. Don't engage. Where exactly are you? I gave him the address. 10 minutes, he said, and hung up. I put my phone away and leaned against a nearby fence post. Patricia had gathered an audience. 5, then 7, then 9 neighbors. Some with coffee cups. A couple with dogs. All orbiting her energy like she was a sun that demanded rotation. And I want to be very clear, she was saying, gesturing toward the empty space where Unit 47 had been, that the rules apply to everyone. That is the founding principle of this community. One of the neighbors, a younger woman with a toddler on her hip, glanced over at me. She'd seen the whole thing. Her eyes asked a question. I gave her the smallest shake of my head. Wait. And frankly, if a police vehicle can simply park wherever it pleases, what message does that send? What does that say about accountability? About respect for community agreements? Someone in the small crowd actually started clapping. Slowly. Uncertainly. Patricia raised her chin. I looked at my watch. 7 minutes. I'll be honest with you, there's a thing that happens in my line of work where time slows down right before a situation changes. Your senses sharpen. The sounds around you get clearer. You notice things. I noticed Patricia checking her own reflection in the screen of her phone. I noticed the tow company sticker on the pole beside the lot exit, the same company that Lou worked for, and made a mental note. I noticed the moment, about 90 seconds before he arrived, when the distant sound of a vehicle moving with quiet, deliberate speed reached the lot. Then Chief Raymond Harding's personal vehicle, a dark blue Ford F-250, unmarked but unmistakable to anyone in law enforcement, rolled to a stop at the lot entrance. Chief Harding is 61 years old. 6'1". The kind of man who has never once in his adult life needed to raise his voice to command a room. He was wearing civilian clothes, weekend clothes, a flannel shirt and work pants, which somehow made him look more authoritative, not less, the way certain instruments sound better unplugged. He stepped out, scanned the lot once, and found me immediately. I gave him a small nod and pointed, with the most minimal gesture I could manage, toward Patricia. He put on his glasses. He looked at Patricia. He looked at the empty space where Unit 47 had been. He looked back at Patricia, who was still mid-sentence about community governance. He walked toward her. He didn't hurry. He never hurries. It's one of the things about the chief, he moves like every step is intentional, like he's already decided how this ends. Patricia saw him approaching and did what confident people always do when interrupted mid-performance, she tried to fold him into the audience. Can I help you? She said, the automatic pleasantness of someone who expected agreement. Patricia Calloway. Chief Harding said. She blinked. Yes. And you are? He reached into the breast pocket of his flannel and produced his credentials. Held them open. Let her read. The color change in her face happened in stages. First, a slight tightening around the eyes. Then, a visible swallow. Then, the particular shade of pale that I have only ever seen on people who have, in the span of one moment, fully understood the distance between where they are and where they thought they were. Chief of Police, she said. Her voice had lost about 40% of its previous certainty. That's right, he said, folding the credentials away. Ms. Calloway, I understand you arranged to have a marked police department vehicle towed from this location approximately, he checked his watch, 22 minutes ago. She clutched the clipboard. The vehicle was in violation of. Ms. Calloway. He said her name the way a period ends a sentence. That vehicle was Unit 47, an active patrol vehicle assigned to Officer Reeves, parked here under a valid departmental home parking authorization which was clearly displayed on the dashboard. Is that correct? I don't see why a placard should. Is that correct? She stopped. Yes, she said. Smaller now. Much smaller. And Officer Reeves spoke to you directly before the tow was completed? Her eyes drifted, almost involuntarily, to where I was standing. I watched the full panorama of realization cross her face. The t-shirt. The jeans. The sneakers. The fact that I had never, not once, told her I was a police officer. The fact that she had stood in front of a cop in street clothes, had a long, documented conversation with him about a police vehicle, and had then proceeded to have that vehicle towed anyway. He didn't, she started. He didn't identify himself. He is not obligated to identify himself while off duty in a public space, Chief Harding said. He did, however, inform you that the vehicle contained a departmental placard, which you acknowledged seeing. Her mouth opened. Closed. The neighbors who had been her audience 60 seconds ago had gone very quiet. The toddler in the young woman's arms said, in the perfectly guileless way that only small children can. From somewhere in the crowd, someone, I will never know who, let out a sound that was not quite a laugh but was adjacent to one. Chief Harding clasped his hands in front of him. "Ms. Calloway," he said, "I want to be precise with you about what has occurred here this morning. Knowingly causing the removal or taking of a law enforcement vehicle from its lawful location constitutes interference with police property under state statute, a felony. When that interference involves directing the displacement of a vehicle in service, it meets the threshold of grand theft auto under the same code." Patricia made a sound I can only describe as a very quiet implosion. "Now," the chief continued, "Officer Reeves has already been in contact with the tow company, and Unit 47 is being returned to this location as we speak. But that does not undo the act itself." "I didn't know," she started. "The placard," he said simply. She had no answer for the placard. He gave her 3 seconds of silence. "The professional kind, the kind that isn't empty, it's full." Then he said, "I'm going to ask you to place the clipboard down and put your hands where I can see them." And Patricia Calloway, Residents Association President, self-appointed parking authority, woman who that morning had smiled at the disappearing rear end of a police cruiser like she'd won a war, looked at Chief Harding with the expression of someone who has just realized the game board was never what they thought it was. She placed the clipboard on the ground. She put her hands out. The chief read her rights in the same unhurried, deliberate voice he uses for everything. Somewhere behind me, Lou the tow truck driver was turning back into the lot, Unit 47 rolling behind him on the flatbed. He climbed out, took one look at the scene, and began unhooking the cruiser with the quiet efficiency of a man who has learned to ask 0 questions. They took Patricia in for processing at 11:31 a.m. I watched the chief's truck pull out of the lot. He'd paused beside me on the way, just for a moment. "You good?" he said. "Yes, sir." He nodded. "Get some sleep, Reeves." "Yes, sir." He drove away. I stood in the lot for a while after that. The neighbors had mostly drifted back to their mornings. The toddler was gone. The dogs were gone. The little audience that had been Patricia's had dissolved like it was never there. The lot was quiet. Unit 47 sat where it belonged, departmental placard gleaming on the dashboard in the late morning light. Here's the thing I think about when I replay that morning. Patricia Calloway wasn't evil. She wasn't even, I think, intentionally malicious. She was something more common and in some ways more dangerous. She was a person who had accumulated just enough small authority to believe that authority was infinite. That rules existed to enforce her preferences. That the world was organized around her sense of order. And when someone calm and quiet and unimpressive looking disagreed with her, she didn't reassess. She escalated. That's the pattern I've seen 1,000 times. The person who needs to win so badly they don't stop to ask whether they're right. I never yelled at Patricia. I never argued. I never even told her she was wrong. I just said okay, and made one phone call. Because here's what 12 years in law enforcement teaches you, if it teaches you nothing else. You don't have to prove anything in the moment. You just have to be patient enough to let the truth arrive on its own schedule. That morning, the truth arrived in a flannel shirt, driving a dark blue F-250. And it arrived in exactly 10 minutes. And that's why you should never mistake calm for weakness, but I'm curious, have you ever met a Karen like this? Let me know in the comments.